Welcome to our AHIC Hospitality Net Insider Podcast. My name is Wolfgang Neumann, and I'm hosting this session today in my role as chairman of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. The Hospitality Alliance is a non-profit organization which unites 25% of the global hospitality industry. And this very alliance drives collaborative action to enable the hospitality industry to have a real lasting impact on our planet and its people. And I am what people in the hospitality industry would call a veteran, but I think for this session more relevant. I'm very passionate about sustainability and the whole ESG arena, and I particularly focus on responsible leadership. And for me, it's really great to see that the Africa and Arabian Hotel Investment Conference, which takes place in December in Dubai, this year focuses a lot on sustainability, and it's great that Jonathan Worsley and the bench team have made that happen. And today's session is sort of a scene setter for this program when it focuses on sustainability. And for me, it's great to be joined by Inge Huijbrechts, who is the Global Senior VP for Sustainability at the Radisson Hotel Group.
Hi, Wolfgang. Nice to be here.
Inge is probably much more passionate about the subject matter than I am, and a much bigger impact you have. But I look forward to share with you at AHIC our sustainability session.
Me too, and we have worked together, so I know how passionate you are about sustainability. So it's great to find you here, and then it's great to find you here, Wolfgang, and be together at AHIC also, where we will develop the sustainability topic further.
Brilliant. Really look forward to that, Inge. And I think it's great that we have Bruni join us, and we're going to have a good discussion, I'm sure, and I'm sure we will have that today also. So let me try to set the scene a little bit here and make sure that people get to know you a little bit the way I do. First of all, where do you call? I know you work in Brussels. Are you actually in Brussels today?
No, I'm not. I'm in Belgium. I'm in the south of Belgium. Belgium, as we, in these conditions, we are so accustomed to working from home. So I'm actually in our country home. And we've gotten accustomed to the digital life, the life of working remotely. But what is very good to see is that our head office in Brussels and also other main offices, they are filling up again, and we can go and meet our teams and people in our hotels again, which is so refreshing.
Yeah, and then you actually say, so actually you do exist, I know. We need to get together again and make our industry alive again. But tell us a little bit, why do you actually work in sustainability? What made you get into this whole area?
Well, I would say it's a little bit a combination of by chance and by conviction, because I have two big parts in my career, and in the middle is a long sailing trip of 4 years. And actually, that's what really convinced me, seeing nature up close, but also seeing at that time, it's more than 10 years ago, but seeing also some damage that we humans are doing to nature. That got me convinced that I wanted to work in sustainability and be a sustainability leader. And then when I returned from that voyage, I got the opportunity to lead the sustainability team at Toyota in Europe. And now since 10 years in Radisson Hotel Group. And in the meantime, have added also safety and security and corporate communication. So I really, sustainability is my passion. I'm so happy to see that there is so much happening and so many requirements coming now on the sustainability front. Everybody's awake on it. So I'm happy about that. And the work is far from done. So we still have a lot to do.
Will it ever be done? That's the question. I know you for many years, and I know that you have made an incredible impact over these years. But let me ask you one question. how do you actually define sustainability? There's so many meanings to everybody. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, for me, I still love the definition that is actually over 30 years old, and that comes from the Brundtland report, the first report that was called Our Common Future, that was actually talking about sustainable development. And it defined development, that as sustainable development, as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's about planetary boundaries, but it's also about the impact of sustainability on global security. So I think what we need to understand is sustainability is about the planet, but also very, very much about the people. So it's more than only climate, and climate is so linked to the people, the well-being, basic human rights, even access to water, and things like that. And I know that you are also putting this on the agenda of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, right? It's not only climate, it's planet and people. I don't know, what is your definition, Wolfgang?
You speak from my heart. It's all encompassing, right? Because today what is happening is that sustainability is so often referred to only in terms of the planet. Now, obviously, we have a huge crisis at our hand, and we're going to talk about it in a moment. But it's much broader, right? And you referred to the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, where we talk about people and planet, where it's all encompassing, focusing on the future and preserving our planet, but not just our planet, but make sure that we, as a society, are functioning properly and are really looking after each other in the way how we are supposed to. So I love what you're saying. And Inge, we obviously come out of a huge crisis recently and partly are still in it. I mean, the pandemic had enormous disruption on all of us, right? And enormous suffering and economic impact. It hit us so hard and made us think. And with it came the whole subject of sustainability to the forefront again. When you look back now at this pandemic, what do you think the learning points are for us, and how does that relate to sustainability?
Yeah, it's a good question. And first of all, I think we're not out of it yet, but we see the road to recovery, which is great. And I think, the title of AHIC, Rise Together, is a very good one. My first learning is, I would say that we have a fantastic industry. I think tourism and travel is so great. And by not having tourism and travel for such a long time now, I think people realize how much they miss to travel, whether it is for business or it is for pleasure. I mean, there's a very interesting, I love that clip that WTTC just put out to say, what does travel mean to you? And it means so many things to so many people. And it's what we said in the beginning, right? Meeting people face to face is just giving so much more than meeting people over a digital connection like what we are doing now. So that's the first lesson. Fantastic industry and great resilience and great people in our industry. But linking it, I would say, to sustainability is we really, really come to see now that the number of the impact of climate change is happening now. We see it. Look at the last weeks. We've seen the catastrophic climate events and natural disasters like forest fires in California, heat waves. We've even experienced it in Germany, Netherlands, Belgium with floodings. Now in Italy, there's the first climate change-induced famine in Madagascar. So it is a reality. And I think what we all realize is there's no vaccine against climate change. Okay, we need to do this together. But on the good side is we can mobilize human effort. If we see what we have done now to create vaccines, to protect a large portion of the population, and the track that we have with this incredible scientific achievement with the vaccination, there's a way to go. But we see that if we mobilize together to tackle a huge problem, we can do it. So my call would be, let's do this against climate change. Let's come together and mitigate and try to reduce our impact and try to protect people also from the devastating impacts of climate change.
You're so right. I mean, the last couple of weeks when you see, I mean, we have witnessed really some really spectacular scenes of destruction. I mean, we all over the world, right? Floods, fires, heat waves, droughts. I mean, and we have so many scientists now who really call us out and say, listen, this is real. This is a real crisis. And I mean, the pandemic gave us this little dip, right, in greenhouse gas emission, down by some 70%. But now it's back again, and we know that tourism is a fairly significant contributor to the carbon emission, about 8%. So we need to take action now. I mean, we need to take real action. So what has to be done in your view?
Well, I think a lot of things have to be done. As we said in the beginning, Wolfgang, you supported our sustainability work in Radisson years ago. You do it now for the industry. The work is never done. But what I think is good, what we are seeing now, is that there's a lot of awareness and there's actually expectations of sustainability coming from all sides. So whether that is when even now during the pandemic, because let's see, the pandemic's impact is not really over yet. So even now people are really putting requirements on sustainability. To give you an example, during the pandemic, when we moved to wrapping, single portion wrapping for our food and beverage offerings in the hotels that could offer food and beverage, we even got comments from our guests that they didn't want that to be wrapped in plastic. So this awareness is just everywhere. And I think that awakening is fantastic to see it with clients, but actually also to see it increasingly in commitments from governments and also the following regulatory frameworks. I mean, to have the US back as a signatory of the climate treaties is fantastic. To see China commit to a net zero future. I mean, to see Saudi Arabia on mobilizing on sustainability, UAE, other countries. I mean, this is amazing, because if it comes back to that mobilization for to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, it's a little bit the same. The more we are all aware, the more we can do things, and we should do them together. I think we can talk more about what we should do in the hospitality industry, because I know you have a clear view on that.
Let me just dive into one thing. You call this awakening. I love the terminology used, because isn't that awakening also driven by the young generation? I mean, they are the ones who they don't let us get away anymore with lip service and making statements. They are much smarter, more educated. They really demand action, and they don't want to hear talk. They want to see evidence. And I think, isn't that a key contributor to the whole movement also?
Yes, absolutely. We know that as employees, the millennials and the Gen Z, they want companies that really are true. They that have a purpose. They want to work for companies that have a purpose and that live up to that purpose. And it's not just the lip service; it's also that. And I think the consumer attitudes are changing. I mean, even on a corporate level, there's much more demand. For example, like this, right? Traveling with a reusable water bottle, or maybe using slower mobility or using ground mobility for business trips that are relatively short or nearby. So I think that is also the push we get from that younger generation who have already changed their consumption attitudes, and who are pushing, as they come into the workforce, they're pushing their companies, and as they are in society, they are very vocal about their demands. They live and breathe on social media. So the speed of that interaction is just increasing, and they are holding companies and groups in society accountable. So
like you say, they look also at the purpose, don't they?
Yeah,
they really examine a company and this purpose or these values, which need to be, as far as I'm concerned, so ingrained into the whole company ethos, the company DNA. And what role does leadership play in that, as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think leadership is essential, because if you talk about the younger generation and how they can contribute and we can learn from them as team members, as employees, that's still a little bit bottom up, or we learn from them as consumers. But leadership on sustainability, on corporate responsibility is essential. And I think that leadership has to come from the top in the company. I mean, you know it, we've worked together also with our current CEO. We can do so much more if there's really support from the very top in the company. Yeah. And I also see that support coming from, we need it from the shareholders too. Companies are in different situations. Some are listed, some are not. And we have this expectation from the clients, but we also need it from the financial side. We also need that support. We have all these big financial funds and institutions who have already spoken out, whether it's real estate owners for hotels and other assets, or whether it is investors like BlackRock and others who have spoken out. I think
so. It's all coming together, isn't it?
What we need.
Have the consumer, we have the external environment to tell us, "Hey, listen, you're not getting away from it. Mm-hmm. It's all over us. It's facing us." We have the employees, the younger generation. We have governments. We have investors. Everything is coming and says to us, "Listen, guys, get active." Right now. Let's draw the conversation a little bit deeper, and we said we need to make it happen. So all these targets, Paris Agreement, 1.5 reduction, climate neutral, climate positive. Is it 2050? Is it 2040? So as an industry, we so much is happening, and yet it's not aligned. So what are your views on it? How back to my question, how do we make it happen?
I think we have to collaborate, and that is also SDG 17. It's partnerships for the SDGs and organizations like Sustainable Hospitality Alliance and other industry associations that are broader in tourism and travel. Those are the ones where we should collaborate, because in my view, sustainability or corporate responsibility is not supposed to be and shouldn't be competitive. It should be really about bringing everybody along on the journey, but also laying out, I think you said it very well, it's about where we need to go. And we know since Paris where we need to go. That's where we need to go. Net zero, 1.5 degrees global warming maximum. By the way, we're on track for 3 degrees, so we have work to do. Mm-hmm. But if we together, in the industry, whether that is on the alliances level or the broader tourism and travel, if we can lay out that pathway to net zero or even beyond, be it net positive, lay out the pathway, but also explain how to start, because that is the thing that I think we should be realistic about. We have a lot of bigger companies, but there's also smaller companies, or there's also independent hotels. You know what a huge variation there is in the hospitality industry. And
we're all at different stages, aren't we? I mean, the industry is so huge. Some companies, be it small or large, they're more advanced, others are less advanced. So I think we need to define sort of a roadmap of how we get to climate positive, and obviously in the Alliance, we have this on our radar. The Sustainable Hospitality Alliance wants to engage in that and lead the way together with other organizations, like you said. Is it UNWTO? Is it WTTC? And we can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone. We need to collaborate. We need to use each other resources, knowledge, and ultimately all make a contribution to preserving our planet. But one aspect which is also, I think, interesting to explore is this whole question of how complex our industry is. And it's not, if the hotel companies alone do it, that's not enough, right? Because we have such a complex value chain. And this value chain, it starts when the hotel is designed, constructed, operators, with brands, with franchisees, with real estate owners. How would that work in your opinion? What is important there to consider?
Yeah, and I smile when you say that, because, before I joined Radisson, as an outsider, you don't really know those complexities in hospitality. So I was thinking, it's not too complex, right? You just green the buildings and you make sure that in operations everything is green and responsible and done, until you arrive and you start looking behind the curtain of this complexity in the industry with the supply chain, and also with the fact that most of us, we are hotel operators. If you talk about hotel companies who don't own the real estate, we don't own the assets. So I think it's so hugely important in our journey to involve the asset owners and the developers into that journey, and also there involve them in the principles on that pathway, to say what are these principles for the operations, but what also are these principles for real estate. And there are a lot, you mentioned that, Wolfgang, and just listing them would take us half an hour. I think you're so well aware that there's so many initiatives of so many parties in this big puzzle that want to do something. But I think what is really needed is to make sure that we hear all those voices, we map them on that pathway, and then all of us together commit to what that pathway needs to be for real estate and for operations.
Yeah.
And also for distribution, because let's not forget that the distribution companies like Booking and TripAdvisor, Expedia and Google and all these platforms that make hotels and tourism and travel available to the guests also to a large extent, that we need to be all on that same journey, but we need to recognize the same pathway and then each take our role in that and see how we can make things advance. In the end, it's every company's decision how fast they can and want to go. But real estate owners and that part is also so essential, because if we want
But they are changing, aren't they? I mean, look at how many investment funds, real estate owners realize now that investing in sustainability actually pays off.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And again, there has been work done to illustrate that and to prove that investing in sustainable buildings, sustainable hotel buildings makes sense. I come back to the point of everybody's on a different stage in the journey. And I think we need to realize that also geographically still, or in type of hotel, or in type of hotel ownership, there's still a big difference. So also there, we need to also not forget about the starting point. We know where we need to go, and some of us are there. And some of these investors, they lead the way and they pull everybody with them, but also start somewhere. And these basic principles, if you really want to make a change, we need that, because unfortunately, not all governments everywhere at the same time. So that is also something that will stimulate and drive change. It's really about defining principles that lift the floor of sustainability, whether you are on real estate or whether you are on operations. Yeah. And also, and that's one point we haven't talked about too much, is the transparency to the guest. Because guests, as we said, they are interested. I mean, we know that the younger generation, but in general, guests are interested in sustainability, but they must be lost. I mean, if you look at all these frameworks, all these initiatives, all these things that are happening, there needs to be some kind of agreement on what can be the basics, what is the next step, what is the pathway, as we said. Because as a traveler, I think some of the travelers must be lost when they see all these.
Yeah, and they become more discerning, the travelers, right? Yeah, they expect more, and I think we also need to be ambitious as an industry to really make sure we have an impact. But Inge, let's involve our conversation a little bit, because we spend a lot of time on planet related, and it is a crisis. But let's get a little bit into the social tissue of our industry. I mean, we are such a great people industry, and we cannot ignore the fact that there's such incredible unemployment, right? I mean, the pandemic has had such devastating impact on so many lives. I mean, there are some 30% of unemployed youth in Europe. I think globally, we are now talking about 500 million people who are not in work or in employment training. And in the hospitality business, we can help, we can get people back into work. What can be done there, you think?
Well, first of all, the hospitality industry is hiring now. And I think, I don't know what you are seeing, but for us in some locations, it's difficult to find people even now as we recover and ramp up. So I think there it's really already a call out to the younger generation and to people. If you have the right attitude, we can train the skills in general, speaking in hospitality. And that's what we always say. It's the great industry where you can enter at any stage in your career, but also at entry-level jobs and really work your way up in the hierarchy. So I think that's also what is important there, to realize that for vulnerable groups or young groups, it's really this attitude that counts, and therefore the skills can be trained, and therefore there can be programs where we reach out to vulnerable.
A good example is the Alliance's youth program, where we have this very specific program which allows people without qualification or experience to get into the industry, and we work with different partners locally, globally, to allow people to come into this wonderful industry and make a career out of it. So I think it's fantastic that we can do this. There is an area, Inge, where we can maybe, or should maybe, recognize that we are not doing enough yet also, and that's the whole area of human trafficking. Today is the 30th of July, and today is actually the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. So it's maybe a good opportunity to underline that our industry is such a people industry and employs so many people, and we need to recruit in a way that it's really fair and equal for everybody. Isn't that still a challenge, let's be honest, in our industry also?
I think you're right. First of all, there has been a lot of awareness that has been created about the risks of trafficking in the hospitality industry. We're one of the sectors, because we are so global, because of certain ways of doing business, etc., because of the intricacies that make it more risky, and that there are risks in our industry. We have collectively, again, done a lot, I think, in our companies and collectively on training, creating awareness. Also, when big events are happening, like, we have the Olympic Games now without spectators, but you could have the Super Bowl, or you could have big events where we have used this opportunity also collectively to create awareness, produce tools, make our teams aware, create awareness among spectators and things like that. On the ethical recruitment, that is also something that we are, I think, very much aware of that, the fact that we have migration corridors, we have people changing country to work in hospitality, and we need to make sure that this is done in an ethical way. And therefore, I mean, you have spearheaded this as leader from the Alliance, but we have agreed on these principles of fair recruitment and of fair recruitment on doing so in different steps in the industry. So these principles have been endorsed by all hotel companies who are members of the Alliance and beyond. And I think, again, to publicly say that we have these principles, to be held accountable against them. And we also are working with, we know we're not perfect because we are a spread out industry. I mean, in our case, we're talking about 1,500 hotels in 120 countries, and many of the groups are even much bigger than that. So we know we are not perfect. So we work also with nonprofit organizations who are experts in this field to look into situations, to work with us, to analyze, and to hold us in that sense accountable against what is happening, and then we collectively or individually take action to improve it based on
talking about holding each other accountable. I think another aspect in this whole area, I mean, we work more and more with outsourcing agencies, right, which makes a lot of sense, gives us the flexibility in the industry. But we also need to hold those third-party agencies, these partners of ours, also accountable, that they do the same as we do as a hotel company. What do you think should be done there? How can we make sure that that's happening?
Well, I think it starts with these principles. So these industry principles, which we have all agreed on ethical recruitment, which is every worker should have freedom of movement, no worker should pay for a job, and no worker should be indebted or coerced to work. So these are the principles, and what we need to do and what we have done, for example, in Radisson, is based on these principles and working with some expert parties, is to create toolkits for our hotels to really train all their HR managers in the hotels to constantly check on these principles. We have also created collateral to inform the teams that should this happen, they have a person of trust, or they even can report anonymously if they wish what is not going well, and then we address that. So I think it's really about building the processes after we've defined the principles, and also, and again, that is something we do together with the Alliance, is take collaborative action in certain places where we can work with local governments, for example, who are open to work with the hotel industry to make sure that there is general awareness and to make sure that we all work together against prevention of trafficking, for example, or for ethical recruitment. So it's principles, processes, and collective action that we are doing.
Yeah, and the Alliance has, as you said, published a great piece of work there and standards which are available for everybody. Yeah. Inge, let me come back to where we started the conversation and sort of slowly closing. But I mean, we're not out of the pandemic. We're still in it. There's no clear visibility, but it's heading in the right direction. And you know, the conference theme is rise. We're rising together. And we're rebuilding a terminology which is used so often now, rebuilding in a responsible way. And I often find myself in conversations where people say, yeah, but at the moment we need to focus on getting out of the pandemic, and we cannot really focus too much on the sustainable aspect or the people aspect, because we now need to generate profits and serve first our shareholders and our P&L. How do you see that? Can we be a responsible way and at the same time make a lasting contribution and feed our shareholders and be balanced in this approach? Is it possible or is it not possible? What are your views?
I think it's needed. It's foolish not to. I mean, I saw this cartoon during the pandemic of, you know, the first wave, it was like waves, the first wave, and you saw a second wave and then a little third wave. And then you saw this huge tsunami on the cartoon, which is climate change. So first, second, third wave of COVID, and then the huge tsunami of climate change. So I think it's foolish not to. And I think if we see this as a non-competitive thing, that's the thing that could work, because it's not about being better in sustainability to be better, in results of business, in business economical results. Although, of course, if you do sustainability, you're going to influence your results positively. Look at the value of real estate. In many markets, if you build green and you renovate green, the value of your real estate is going to go up. But it's about making it non-competitive and collective. That I think,
and I think that's such an important message we want to give at AHIC also, because yes, we want to drive the recovery, restore profitability for our investors, but at the same time, we need to embrace sustainability and save our planet, because there's a future generation out there. So it's not either or, we need to do both, right? And making both happen is good for everybody. And there so many studies have been done which prove that. And I think, as we now established in this conversation, we have to act fast, and the expectations from everybody are rising. And I look at it, it's a responsibility, but to me, it's more an opportunity. I mean, it's really where we all can make a difference now. And it's music to my ears to hear you say once more that we need to do it together. We need to work together and collaborate through organizations like the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance or others, where we come together with a common purpose, with a common vision, and make it happen. And I think Radisson is such a good example also of a company who has done this for so many years and made a contribution, not just within your own company, but for the purpose of the alliance also. So what are your closing words, Inge, in terms of rising together? What is your main appeal for our attendance at the conference from your perspective?
Yes. First of all, I look forward to seeing everybody in person. That's a start. And then I think that we can use that energy of being together and it being an investment conference to link the efforts that the hotel management companies can do together through an alliance like the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance or through the WTTC, to say, let's reach out, let's include the real estate owners, the developers in this journey, and do this together.
Yeah, it is only together. It's across the entire value chain. And my parting words of summary is, it all starts on the top. It starts with the leaders. It's about responsible leadership. And I think as individuals, as human beings, irrespective of business, we are called for action to make a difference for future generations, and as leaders. So we need to rise all together. And I really look forward to discussing that more with you, Inge, at our panel, with Brune von Accor. And we also have the Sustainable Hospitality Challenge, where we have our students from the universities coming together on a global competition, which the Hotel School AHIC sponsored together with Bench also. So there's a lot of sustainability focus at AHIC. And I think on behalf of both of us, that we look forward to having everybody there and join us in the discussion, and most importantly, join us afterwards in making it happen.
Yes, thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you for the chat. I really enjoyed it.
Good to talk to you.
It's energizing, and we see each other soon.
See you in Dubai.